Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We always aim to pull out the most important nuggets of knowledge from different sources so you can get quickly up to speed. Today, we're taking a deep dive into something that, well, it quietly shapes our lives probably far more than we even realize. Habits. And specifically, we're focusing on this idea of atomic habits, a term really brought to life by James Clear in his book, Atomic Habits, Small Changes, Big Impact. So our mission today is to kind of extract the key insights from these sources, really understand how these tiny, seemingly small behaviors can actually lead to pretty remarkable outcomes in your life. There's this common belief, isn't there, that real transformation needs these dramatic shifts or grand resolutions. Quitting cold turkey, we've all probably tried that new year, new me thing. But what if that whole way of thinking is, well, maybe be counterproductive? What if the real lasting change doesn't come from some giant leap, but from doing just one incredibly small thing, but doing it consistently?
Yeah, it's fascinating because the source material really points out that, both the science and just lived experience, they tell a very different story. The surprising insight isn't really about willpower conquering everything. Not at all. Instead, it's that lasting change tends to flow from these small but really powerful atomic habits. And they work because they cleverly, almost deceptively, bypass our brain's natural resistance to big changes.
Resistance? How so?
Well, our brains, they're fundamentally wired for efficiency, right? Always looking for the path of least resistance. So big, daunting tasks, they kind of trigger this threat detection system, makes us hesitate, procrastinate.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
But tiny actions, like really small ones, they just don't register as a threat. And that allows positive change to sort of embed itself, almost without you noticing. It works with your biology, not, fighting against it.
Hey, that's a really crucial distinction, isn't it? Working with your brain, not fighting it. So, all right, if we're not relying on just brute force or massive willpower, how does the source explain the actual mechanism? Like, how do habits actually form? What's the psychology going on there?
Yeah, it really boils down to what's often called the core psychology of it. The cue, craving, response, reward loop.
Cue, got, craving, response, reward.
Well, exactly. It's basically how our brain learns and then reinforces any behavior, good or bad, doesn't matter. So a cue is just a trigger. Maybe seeing your running shoes by the door.
Right.
That cue can then trigger a craving, maybe, a desire to feel energized or healthier. That craving then leads to a response that's the actual action you take. So going for the run.
Okay.
And then finally, that response gets cemented by a reward. The feeling of accomplishment or maybe just feeling better physically. The really deep insight here is if you can understand that loop and then consciously identify and then strategically tweak, any part of it, you gain this huge leverage to slowly, gently kind of rewire your brain over time.
That makes so much sense, just understanding that underlying loop.
Yeah.
Okay, so for someone listening right now thinking, right, I get the loop, but how do I actually do this? What are some of the first, maybe most actionable strategies the source talks about to actually start building these little atomic habits?
Well, one of the most powerful ones is what's called habit stacking.
Habit stacking.
Yeah. So instead of trying to just, force a new habit into your day out of nowhere, you link it to something you already do effortlessly. Think about it, right? You probably brush your teeth every morning without even thinking.
Yeah, pretty much automatic.
So the source suggests you could say, okay, after I brush my teeth, I will read 1 page of a book, or I will do 2 push-ups. You're basically leveraging that existing really strong routine as the trigger, the cue, for your new tiny habit.
I see.
And it works because your brain already has that pathway carved out for the existing habit, right? You're just adding a tiny little branch onto it. It's much easier.
I really like that. It feels like you're kind of tricking your brain into starting because it's attached to something automatic already. But okay, what about those times when even that 1 page or, 2 push-ups still feels like too much effort? Does the source offer ways to handle that? Like when you're just not feeling motivated to make starting almost irresistible?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's where the 2-minute rule comes in.
Or 2-minute rule.
Yeah, the basic idea is just make your new habit so incredibly tiny, so easy that it takes less than 2 minutes to actually perform. So if you want to start exercising, the habit isn't work out for an hour. No way. It's just put on my gym shoes. That's it.
Put on the shoes.
Put on the shoes. Or if you want to write, it's maybe just open my laptop and open the writing document. The genius of it isn't just about starting small, though. It's really about overcoming that psychological inertia, that activation energy, that huge mental barrier just to begin.
Right, that feeling of, ugh, I don't want to
Exactly. And once you bypass that, even just for 2 minutes, your brain's natural tendency towards momentum often just kicks in. You might end up doing much more. But the goal is simply to get into motion. That's the key.
It resonates, yeah. I can think of so many times I've talked myself out of something just because the whole task felt way too big. It really is about just getting over that initial hump, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the sources also mention making things easier by like leaving visual cues around. I think I read that.
You did, yeah.
Like leaving my water bottle out or maybe my meditation cushion right where I'll see it. That makes sense. Designing your environment to help you out.
It really does. This idea of environmental design, it's incredibly effective. Our brains are just highly responsive to visual prompts. So by making the cue for your desired habit really obvious and making the action easy to access, you just dramatically reduce the friction involved in starting. You're essentially creating these little physical nudges that remind you and simplify the whole process. It's about making the good choices, the easy choices, the default choices in your space.
Okay, so we've got the initial spark, right, with habit stacking,
Yeah.
the 2-minute rule. We're making it easy with these environmental cues. But then how do you keep it going? How do you sustain that momentum? What does the source say about, keeping these tiny actions going once you've actually started them?
Right, because starting is one thing, sticking with it is another. Well,
Sure.
once you're doing these small actions, tracking your progress can actually be a really powerful kind of subtle reward.
Tracking, like a checklist or something.
Exactly. Even just a simple checklist or a habit tracker app or even just putting an X on a calendar, it can be incredibly motivating. We just naturally seem to love seeing progress, seeing that chain build. It gives you immediate visual feedback that reinforces the behavior.
Ah, okay, that little dopamine hit of checking the box.
Precisely. But what's really crucial here, the source emphasizes, is not to obsess over, like, perfection. Don't aim for a flawless streak. The real goal is consistency, not perfection. Missing one day isn't failure.
Oh, that's good to hear.
Yeah, the key rule is never miss twice. If you miss a day, just make sure you get back on track the next day. That keeps the habit alive. So it's the subtle reinforcement that helps embed the behavior without feeling overwhelming.
Okay, that makes sense. Don't break the chain, but if you do, start a new one immediately. So we've covered a lot of the practical stuff, the mechanics, but what about the deeper shift, the sort of, I don't know, philosophical change maybe that the source encourages for making change really last? What's the most profound insight there for building habits that actually stick for life?
Yeah, this is where I think it gets really interesting. It's the concept of identity-based habits.
Identity-based. Okay.
So instead of focusing only on what you want to achieve, like, I want to run a marathon, which is an outcome goal, the source encourages you to focus on who you want to become, the identity. So instead of I want to run a marathon, it's I am a runner.
Yeah. Okay. So it's a shift in self-perception.
Exactly. When your habits are tied to who you fundamentally believe you are, they become more than just actions you take. They become part of your self-concept. And the deep insight there is that our brains are incredibly motivated by consistency. We want our actions to align with our beliefs about ourselves.
Right. Cognitive dissonance if they don't match up.
Precisely. So when a habit aligns with who we believe we are, that internal friction, that resistance to doing it, it just dramatically decreases. Because you're not just doing some task you feel you should do, you're actually reinforcing your very sense of self. You're not just doing something, you're becoming someone.
Wow. That's a profound point. Shifting from just doing to actually being, it really transforms the motivation, doesn't it? It takes it from being about some external achievement to being about like internal alignment. Okay, so pulling all these different threads together now, what's the core idea you really want listeners to walk away with about the power of these atomic habits?
I think the central idea, really, is that the power of atomic habits lies precisely in how subtle they are. They're actually really easy to dismiss at first, aren't they? Because they don't bring these immediate dramatic results.
Yeah, you put your running shoes on once, you don't suddenly feel like a marathon runner.
Exactly. You won't see a huge change right away, but it's the consistent accumulation. It's doing those tiny things day after day, week after week, month after month. That is incredibly powerful. It genuinely is like the compound interest of self-improvement, as Clear calls it. You're not forcing change down your own throat. You're gently inviting it. You're allowing it to build. And this whole approach It just acknowledges how our brains actually work, how we naturally operate. It makes transformation feel less like this constant battle
Yeah.
and more like a natural, almost inevitable evolution over time. It respects your biology.
That idea of compound interest for yourself, for your own growth, that's really compelling. So maybe a final thought for everyone listening. Next time you feel that urge to change something big in your life, maybe resist that impulse to go huge, to make some grand gesture. Instead, maybe go atomic, go small, really small. And just imagine, how those little actions day by day might just start whispering to you, hey, you're doing it. You're actually becoming the person you want to be.